I have another heartfelt episode lined up for you today. I have a great conversation with Susan, and we really dive into the depth of why a lot of us women are putting our healthcare on the back seat. We look at judgment, we look at fear, and we look at our own vulnerability. But before we start, I'd like to ask you a favor. Could you share this episode with 5 of your friends? My goal is to reach as many women as possible and to share our stories, because our stories need to be told. Our voices need to be amplified. And I believe that when we raise our voices together, we can create the community that we need and bring about the changes that we deserve. My goal is to provide the space and the platform to do it. And all I'll need is your help. I'm asking you to share this episode with your friends. Now buckle up. This is going to be one hell of a ride. This is the Roller Coaster Podcast. We are here to help you be empowered and renew your sense of purpose as a midlife mom. This is your time to redefine and reclaim your power as a woman. Just because our kids are getting older doesn't mean that our lives still don't have crazy twists, turns, ups and downs. And that's not to mention what our hormones are doing. We're navigating helping our kids plan their next chapters while quietly wondering, what the heck does my next chapter look like? My name is Lucy Q, wife, mom, podcaster, and journaling mentor. This is a crazy time in your life, but you are not alone. So I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 roller coaster. Life is like...
This is the roller coaster of midlife, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. I want to start off by asking you a question. Have you ever found yourself asking, why did I agree to that? It's a question that many women who find themselves juggling their own healthcare needs might relate to. And it's a question that our guest today, Susan Salenger, author of the groundbreaking book, Sidelined: How Many Women Manage and Mismanage Their Health. She found herself asking this question, and Susan sheds light on the paradox of women's health, being vigilant gatekeepers for their family's well-being, yet often sidelining their own. Welcome, Susan.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
And as I said before we hit record, the conversation about women's health care for me really seems to be bubbling to the surface right now, both through my own personal experience with something I'm dealing with, but also the conversations that I see women trying to have on social media. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But first, can you maybe take us through your own story and what led to you writing this book?
It was actually kind of a journey. It started many, many, many years ago, where I agreed to some surgery, exploratory surgery that I knew I didn't need. And I agreed to it anyway. I had been on some hormones for osteoporosis, actually. And the doctor said, hey, I've got this new med, it's better for your bones. Let's give it a shot. And I said, of course. But then I began some vaginal bleeding and other symptoms. And I said to him, I better go back on the old meds because I know obviously the new meds don't agree with me. And he completely disagreed, did a bunch of tests, found nothing, said, listen, we really need to do some exploratory surgery. Well, I knew it was the meds. I mean, it had to be. And yet, not only did I agree to it, but I insisted it be done sooner rather than later. And I remember lying on the gurney, being wheeled into the operating room, thinking, why did I agree to that? Why am I here? What am I doing? Anyway, they found nothing. And, life goes on. I was a mother with 2 young kids, etc. So many, many years later, I had been in business with my husband, and after I retired, which was not for me, it took me 3 seconds of retirement, I went back to school and took some anthropology classes, actually medical anthropology classes. And I learned so many things about women's health that, excuse me, that I know women didn't know. I mean, academics write for each other, And I thought to myself, I really want to get some of this information out there. And then to make what I hope isn't too long a story, but for one of the classes, I interviewed women who had had hysterectomies, and many of them had also agreed to the surgery, even though they weren't sure they needed it. One of them was positive that her symptoms were menopausal and agreed to the hysterectomy anyway. So of course that acted as a trigger. And I remembered my own story, and I thought, I really need to delve into this and see what's going on. So I interviewed a bunch of women and found stuff they had in common. And it was just, it took off from there. But it was a long journey, but a good one.
Now you got me really curious. What were some of those things that you discovered in your classes that you thought that women needed to hear about?
Well, I was so surprised to find out that, well, first of all, women we're very proactive, and we're very vigilant about our health when it comes to preventive stuff. But when we're sick, we hesitate to call the doctor. Women put themselves last. We take care of everybody but ourselves. And that was a real surprise to me. Here goes my cough.
I
Sorry.
also find that as women, we also have the tendency to minimize what we're going through. Oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Or somebody's had it worse. Can't possibly do that. Did you have any sort of, in your classes, did you have any sort of reasonings behind why we're doing that?
Well, I think it's partly, I think it's because we're socialized to take care of others. Researchers gave women a list of 5 things to prioritize. And first, we prioritize our children. Most of us take care of our children first. Then our pets. I loved this. And then elderly parents. I mean, I could just see you say, Mom, I just can't help you right now. The dog's really sick. I mean, it makes sense, but there it is.
I must have a different perspective on I have 2 cats, and at the best of days, they're a couple of assholes. So
yes, I do. Exactly.
I'm going to put my cats at the bottom of the list.
I know just what you're saying. I have one. But anyway, and then they take care of their significant others, and all of the women, or mostly all of them, put themselves last. And I think it's really a cultural thing. We're socialized to do that, to take care of we're nurturers, we're caretakers. And I think that what women don't always realize is how difficult it is to take care of your families when you're not feeling well and you don't have the energy and you're irritable. Sometimes it's better just to throw in the towel and say, hey, look, I don't feel good. I need to lie down. I need to call the doctor. I need to do something to make me feel better, not only for myself, but so I can take care of you in the way that I want to do so.
Here's one of the things I'm struggling with is that women, our hormones, they rule every day for us. Everything in a woman's body is controlled by their hormones, and those hormones change on virtually a daily basis. So let's be honest in saying trying to figure out the female body is challenging at the best of times, because it's always different, it's always changing, and every woman is different. So that in itself is a bit of a complication. But I am beginning to feel that there just isn't any emphasis put on understanding female hormones. There just isn't, because women are starting to struggle with hormones. I don't want to say when it's too late, but when you're so far down the path that trying to reverse things is even more challenging. I can't help but wonder if we should not be monitoring our hormone profiles from the time that we first start our periods.
That is an interesting point. And one of the things that I actually thought about when I was interviewing the women that had hysterectomies, or women, for example, who have thyroid surgeries, I think it's really good to get a baseline of what your hormones are. Can I say normally? I don't know.
Yeah, right. Whatever's normal for you. And, right. And the thing is, my thyroid went wacky when I was 21.
Yes.
So there was no baseline before that. I've only really sort of known life post thyroid problems.
Right.
When it comes to my hormones. Because I mean, I think leading, when you sort of start your hormonal changes up until the age of 21, they're still in a
You're
a
still
mix
growing.
in itself. There is no stable point. So I mean, for me, I think I've always been a bit of a mess when it's come to my hormones.
Yeah.
But there was never, and I think just not by establishing any sort of baseline, it's made everything 10 times harder because it's, well, what is normal?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I absolutely would. And just to go back to what you were saying about there hasn't been enough studies, really, you were saying of women's bodies. And I really want to emphasize that because at least I want to say two things, actually. Number one of the things I did learn in my classes, and I was really surprised, is that women's diseases get much less research money than men's diseases. For example, prostate cancer gets a lot more research money than uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, and our cancer. Those cancers are much more fatal than prostate cancer, but the men get the bucks. The second thing I learned, and this all ties together, I'm going somewhere with this, I have a point. The second thing is that women researchers get less money and less opportunities for research than male researchers. And on top of that, women researchers are published less often, so their research doesn't get out there. So if you're a woman researcher researching a women's diseases, you're going to find yourself more than likely at the bottom of the funding barrel. And that leads me to where I want to go, which is why it's so important for women to get a second opinion, which if you can't always get a baseline, which is what we were talking about, it's really important to get a second opinion on your prescription, on your treatment, on your diagnosis. Women are just 20 to 30% more likely to be misdiagnosed than men. And that's partly because we don't understand women's bodies, which is just what you were saying.
Yeah, and certainly from my experience, when I first started having what you would consider perimenopause symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't recognized as that. I believe that I started to have perimenopause symptoms in my late 30s.
Yes.
And when I did have a doctor, family doctor at the time, I was prescribed antidepressants.
So typical.
Which is so typical because of the nature of our broken healthcare system here in Canada. I did not have a family doctor for the better part of 8 years. So I could go to what you call a walk-in clinic and get a refill of my thyroid medication.
Right.
But anything else was a struggle to get. I would get, I could get a pap here or there, but, most of the time there was no sort of real healthcare. The walk-in clinics wouldn't allow me to come off the antidepressants because I wasn't under the care of a doctor.
The catch-22.
So
wow.
I did something that's highly frowned upon, and I took myself off them because I knew that they were causing. I knew when you're taking something that your body knows is not right for it, your body will tell you.
Yes.
And so that's what I did. And I don't recommend doing it. It's not recommended. It is very challenging, but I felt that I had to do what was right for me.
Let me interrupt just for a minute.
Please.
I'm old. I don't want to lose my train of thought. But I think what you did, I think you said two things that are really important. Listen to your body. Like if I had listened to my body, I would not have undergone that surgery. It was obvious. And I think that our intuition is really important. The second thing is in your situation or people that are in your situation where a doctor's care is not readily available or you don't have the resources to get there. When you do decide to go off a medication, do your research. I mean, for example, I'm on an antidepressant too, and you're not supposed to go off it just like that. I mean, I don't know that you did. I don't mean it that way. But first, if you're doing 10 milligrams, you go to 5.
You wean yourself off.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. So I just wanted to interject that because I don't want somebody to listen to this and immediately throw out their pills.
Yeah, no, and that's what I did is I just eased myself down and did it. Right. It's still, I mean, your body still goes through a bit of withdrawal. Yes. And you're suddenly dealing with things that you haven't had to dealt with for years.
Right.
But, my hormones have been on that roller coaster since my late 30s. And when I would go to a doctor about a symptom, they were dismissed or ignored. almost to the point where, and I think this happens to a lot of women, is that we feel that we're complaining about something that we shouldn't be complaining about.
Mhm. That's actually in my book. One of the things that interested me is that women felt so ashamed, so guilty for being ill or for having symptoms. So if you feel badly that you're having symptoms in the first place, and the doctor says, hey, listen, these aren't real symptoms, you're just depressed, that of course confirms your original assumption that you're messed up in the first place. And I think that can be a very poor signal to give any patient, whether woman or male or female.
Yeah, it's almost, there, dear, take this pill and,
Yes,
go away.
there, exactly.
and
Exactly.
and I think that's, I think that's one of the defaults that have happened in our healthcare system, is that a prescription is written to remedy all.
Mhm. And that's true here too. I mean, I'm as I said, in San Francisco, and I know your healthcare system is obviously much different from ours, but it's the same kind of
Yeah.
issue.
It's always, if you have this symptom, we're going to give you this prescription, instead of actually understanding, well, why do I have that symptom? What is
Right.
the root cause of this problem? And let's deal with that.
Exactly. Which is why I again emphasize the importance of a second opinion. I
Yeah.
think it's critical.
If you can get one.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's
And,
absolutely right.
and that's the thing,
Right
is
now.
that here you can't really get, for general things, you can't get a second opinion. You have to be the patient of a doctor. And if we don't have doctors taking on new patients, you can't just go to another doctor.
Wow. So what do you do?
Suffer.
Is there a plan B for this?
No, there is no plan B. So,
Huh.
I said, I'll share a little bit about my story, about what I've been dealing with the last few months. I was seeing, I didn't have a doctor, but I finally found a nurse practitioner as a healthcare provider. Great. So I had this nurse practitioner put me on hormone replacement therapy. I was done dealing with everything. I wanted to go on hormone therapy. Great. I got put on that. A few months later, that nurse practitioner went to a different practice and I was assigned a new one. And that's when they found the mistake. The first nurse practitioner didn't know that if you're put on hormone replacement therapy, estrogen, that if you have your uterus, you still need to have progesterone.
Okay.
And the reason why you need to have the progesterone is to stop the potential of uterine cancer.
Of course.
So to me, that spoke to the true essence, that lack of understanding when it comes to the female body. Something so obvious
Right.
was missed,
Right.
And as a result, I have to go for a biopsy to make sure. But then, you're going back, you brought up women having hysterectomies, and do they need them? Don't they need them? And it's something that's been running through my mind is, okay, now that you've raised this question, if that biopsy comes back as saying, no, you're in the clear, am I still going to be questioning? Is this going to pop up? Is this potential to coming down the road? It really sort of opens a lot of questions for how do you handle your health going forward when it comes to something like this.
Of course it does. It's scary as hell.
It is. But who do I go for a second opinion? No one. It's the wait list is 3 to 4 months just to get the biopsy.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't have that here. I don't know, because I mean, Kaiser here is a big healthcare system that a lot of people belong to, and I don't. So my situation's different. I go privately. I have great insurance and I'm on Medicare. So I go privately. So I just get a second opinion,
Yeah, that to my knowledge, that just does not exist here.
Oh, wow.
Second opinion? I don't think it exists.
So you haven't had the biopsy yet?
No, not yet.
Well, don't think about a hysterectomy unless.
No, my mother had one when she was, I'm gonna say she was in her early 40s, but she had horrendous fibroids. I mean, she was
Yeah.
basically hemorrhaging every month. And
My daughter was too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for her, yeah, there was, but then
No,
for some reason, 10, I want to say 10 years later, because they only took the uterus the first time, then 10 years later, God knows why, they went back in and took her fallopian tubes and ovaries.
wow. Wonder
I'm
why.
like, why?
Yeah. I don't understand.
I don't know, no, I don't understand. But her doctors told her to do it, so she did it. She never even questioned.
Yeah. All I
And
can
I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier.
I want to just put in a plug for the book in a minute because it totally fits here. I want to say research, research, research. And the reason I'm saying that is you want to, and I said it earlier, you want to look up exactly what it is you're taking, what the side effects are. And at the back of my book, in fact, it's the best part of the book, honestly, is the resource section. It tells you how to research. It tells you where to research. I did a lot of work on that. So if I'm saying, look up the prescription you've been given, there's a couple of websites or whatever, I can't remember anymore. Drugs.com is one I go to, and you look it up. In fact, I'll tell you a story that happened to me. Unfortunately, my own book kind of saved me, but I'm very lucky. I've always been healthy, and it's purely luck, believe me. I've never had pain. And one morning I woke up, with a sore thumb, and it lasted for about a month. And because I'm a hypochondriac, I decided it was probably brain cancer that had metastasized to my thumb, just who I am. So I went to a hand doctor, and she said, relax, you've got arthritis. She gave me some meds for the pain. And I said, well, I'm on Lexapro, it's an antidepressant for depression. Is there any interaction? And she said, no, you'll be just fine. Just take the pill and go home. So I did, and came home, looked it up because I wrote this book. And it turns out, she was 99% right. But 1% of the people that take this particular pain medication and Lexapro have the potential for a brain bleed. And I thought, well, if you're the 1%, that's for a sore thumb. I'm not sure I really want to risk a brain bleed. So I did not fill the prescription, and my thumb is fine. It just went away. But if I hadn't researched that, it gave me the opportunity to realistically assess the benefits and the drawbacks. And the drawback was so severe compared to the minimum amount of pain I was having.
It
And
just wasn't worth it.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
worth it. It's not, if I hadn't been able to walk or something, that's something different. Then you make a decision and you take whatever chance you want to take. But for a thumb, I got 9 other fingers. Of course, it just wasn't worth it. So I think it really illustrates why you want to research, because it gives you the information to make your own decision in an educated manner. And that's critical.
And I think that's the key message right now, that, it doesn't make a difference where you are or what form of healthcare that you have. I think you do have to take control of your own healthcare, because nobody knows your body better than you. Nobody knows how taking something makes you feel.
Right.
And, this goes back to what you were saying earlier about just trusting your intuition.
Yes. Yes.
Is that we have to take control. We have to educate ourselves. Sometimes I felt like a medical detective, just trying to understand what was going on with my body. And it can get very frustrating.
Oh, terrible.
Because
very scary.
Yeah. And, a lot of the resources when it comes to talking about women's health, they're very what I call surface level, where they just say, these are the symptoms that you may have.
Right.
There's no sort of real depth to anything. And,
yes.
There's a big difference between checking off a box saying, yes, I have this symptom, versus, okay, this is why you might have this symptom, and these are some of the things you might be able to try for it. Because it's my understanding so far that a lot of these symptoms that we're experiencing in midlife, a lot of them are related to different sort of mineral deficiencies that we may have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that, there could be a very easy fix to some of these things.
That's
but it's
interesting.
trying to find that information.
Yeah, it's very tricky. And I think, as I said earlier, one of the things that I think really interferes with women's motivation to do that is the shame they feel about having something that might be wrong. It really prevents women from calling the doctor because they're embarrassed, they're uncomfortable. Well, and you can't call the doctor so easily as you do.
And there's, you know what, I think there's a certain level of judgment. We feel judged.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
if it, I'm a plus size woman mainly, and I strongly believe because of what my hormones are doing or aren't doing.
right,
And, you know, the amount of times I've had a healthcare professional tell me it's calories in, calories out.
right, right,
And it's like, no, wait a second. I know
right.
it's not,
Yes,
because, you know, last summer, I spent the better part of last summer because we have a beautiful beach just down the road from us, and we love to take sunrise walks there. And it's about a 4 kilometer walk down and back. And we
yeah.
would do this 4 or 5 times a week. I'm a
Wow.
I'm a vegetarian.
Yeah,
I eat well. I drink
yeah,
my water.
yeah.
I did not lose a single ounce that summer.
Oh my goodness.
Nothing. I stayed the exact same weight. So it's
Oh,
like, don't tell me it's calories in, calories out. There's something else going on. But and it can be very disheartening when you go looking for answers, and you just get these generic, you know, drink more water, eat this, do this, flat belly diet, all of these things. And I think, you know, when it comes to talking about ourselves, I think there is a large amount of judgment or fear of judgment, because when a doctor looks at me, they're going to think I eat hamburgers and french fries all the time,
right, right, right.
but I don't.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. And I wonder if it's your thyroid, of course, too.
Oh, probably. It's in that, and that's the thing is that again, going back, hormones rule every aspect of our body.
It's
And
true.
I think, and because women's hormones are changing, you know, we have 4 different cycles a month, whereas men's just sort of peak and rise within 24 hours, and it's always the same and it just goes. All of our medical research is being based on the male body.
Absolutely. And it's much better than it was. I want to
Well,
just
that's
jump.
good.
It's not perfect,
It's not
but
perfect.
at
and
least
and
women are being included in studies now.
at least we're, you know, we're being included, but I would still wager to say that it's still younger females being included in those studies,
That I don't know, and you very well may be right. That I don't.
because because it's just, there are too many possibilities when dealing with a midlife women whose hormones are continuously changing and doing things that you're never expecting to do.
Let's go back to that judgment that you were
Yeah.
talking about. I absolutely found that in my research. I think I can't remember if I said, but it did interview about 50 or 60 women, and 9 out of 10 said that they blamed their illness on stress, which really meant that they blamed themselves for their illness. They felt that they just couldn't manage their stress, that they were overwhelmed. And the way they saw their illness, though, was like almost a public, can I say, announcement that, oh, look, I'm so stressed and I can't manage my life, and that's why I'm sick. So they rarely told anybody they were ill. They felt very guilty for being ill, tried to overcome it and not call the doctor because they were, like you were saying, they were too embarrassed. They were afraid of a judgment. It's a vicious circle, because then of course you still don't feel well, and you feel worse because you're more stressed. I mean, et cetera, et cetera. I put together a couple of focus groups just because I wanted geographical diversity. And I was startled to find that in the focus groups, hardly anyone had ever talked to anybody about their illnesses other than their doctors, because they were so embarrassed and ashamed about being ill. They denied themselves the support of the people around them. They were so happy in these focus groups to talk to each other and find out that regardless of their particular disease, they all shared similar emotional issues. And I thought that was a very significant, I mean, it's totally surprised me. It wasn't what I expected to hear, but there it was.
I could see women blaming themselves.
Yes,
It's their fault. You know, you were talking about stress, but I can also see women blaming themselves because they didn't eat healthy enough,
right. Either
because
I should have,
they
yeah, exactly. Should I have
like,
taken, yeah, should I have taken, did I take too many naps or not enough? Should
did
I
I
have,
have too many glasses of wine?
yeah,
Not enough. Did I eat
exactly,
too much steak? Not
exactly,
enough. Like, and
exactly.
and oh, you got to wonder why we do that to ourselves.
I don't know. I think again that we're supposed to be caretakers, and the minute that we think we're flunking the caretaker part of our role, we just slip right into guilt. And we got to take care of, I mean, even, what's the line? Even the airlines tell you to put your own mask on.
Oxygen mask on
Yeah,
first.
yeah, and they're right. You can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself, and that's critical.
And something struck me this morning because I was supposed to do something with a friend online. We were supposed to do a live this afternoon, and I said, you know, my hormones have got me right now. I'm just like in a mess. Can we do it another day? She's like, sure, no problem. And she said, just remember, I'm here if you want to talk about things. And you know what struck me that I thought was really sad? I don't even know how to talk about it.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
wondering if that's what you found with the women in your focus groups about how do you even begin to start those conversations? Where do you start by saying, this is how I'm feeling right now? How do you even begin? Because, you know, in midlife, when your hormones and emotions are all over the place, so are your thoughts. So, how do you even begin to formulate those words to express to somebody how you're feeling without fear of the guys in the white jackets picking you
yeah.
up?
Right, right. That is an excellent question, and nobody's ever asked me that before. I want to think about it just for a second, because I think what I would say, I'm not saying this is the right way or the only way. I'm just thinking if that was me, and it has been, excuse me, it has been me. I recently lost my husband, and it was a wonderful marriage. And I am and was devastated. Um, and when people say to me, how are you? Nobody's ever really said to me, how are you doing? What meaning, don't just say fine. So usually people will say, how are you? And sometimes if it's a good friend who I've trusted or I know I feel safe with, I'll say, I need to talk to you a minute. I'm really not doing well right now. I just need a shoulder to cry on. And I can't imagine anybody ever saying, well, no, I don't want to be that person. I mean, nobody would do that. And if they do, hang up and, throw them to the curb. So I think I just put it out there. But I admit that I need to feel safe first. And now you're going to ask me, how do I know when I feel safe? And I haven't the slightest idea. It's an intuition again.
And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why we're not having those conversations, is because there are so many things as women that we've pushed aside and we've repressed when it comes to speaking of ourselves and speaking about ourselves,
Yes.
that there's such a vulnerability.
Yes.
You know, in some ways, you know, we just met this morning, we've known each other for half an hour. In some ways, I found it easier to say some things to you that I couldn't say to my closest friends.
Yeah.
And again, I'm wondering, is that fear of judgment?
Probably. I think so. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you feel you are vulnerable. I'm not
Yeah.
even gonna, I mean, it's real. It is a vulnerability. Somebody could kick you in the ass and feel terrible, But again, if somebody does do that and they don't listen, then you just picked the wrong person. It doesn't
Exactly.
mean you did the wrong thing.
Right.
I mean, I
Right.
had a friend, I had this one, I mean, I met my husband, I was 18, he died when I was 78. So that's I never even did any adulting, if you'll pardon the word, without him. And I had somebody say to me after he died, very suddenly, no illness. And she said to me, well, think positive. I mean, really? You got to be kidding me. I mean, so I thought to myself, okay, I know who this person is now. I don't open it. When she says to me, how are you doing? Well, she doesn't say that. She says, hi, how are you? And I go, fine, thank you. How are you? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. So that isn't somebody that I would choose to open my heart to. And another woman, just to give you the contrast, I guess, I think what I'm trying to discuss, I'm thinking out loud about how I measure this. If I was at a party and I hadn't seen this particular woman in a long time, and she said, "Hi, Sue, how are you doing?" And I said, "I'm fine, how are you?" She said, "No, really, that's your social answer. I want to know how you're really doing." So at that point, I said, "Well, actually, I'm not doing well at all, you know." And I mean, but so I felt very safe. She invited me to open up, and I did. And there are other people that I've said, "Listen, I've invited myself to open up. Is it okay with you?" I mean, your friend said she was there. If you wanted to talk, I would call her back and say, "I'd love to talk. I really need to let go of some of this, and maybe it'll help just by having somebody listen." I think that's a good beginning. And I think when people, I want to go one, I don't mean to, I know I could see you're
Oh, no,
looking
no, keep going, keep going.
but I feel that if somebody starts to give you advice, that drives me nuts. I mean, I'm a very bright woman. Don't tell me what to do. Just listen to me and let me cry on your shoulder. I know what I should do or what I ought to do or what I've read that I should do. And maybe they work for me on some days and not. I don't need your advice. I just need your ears and your shoulder to cry on. And I don't know if you would feel that way or not.
I think that's very, very wise words that you just shared there, because again, and I think this goes back to the nature of being a woman, is that we do feel that we need to fix things. We need to solve problems. And I
Mhm.
know it's one of the things that I have to catch myself on,
Of
is
course.
that is like, is somebody coming to me because people do come to me to solve their problems. But when
Sure.
somebody comes to you, is, do they want the problem solving, or do they just want to be heard?
You just want to be heard.
And I think, throughout this conversation, I think we've identified some really core issues that we as women need to start to acknowledge when it comes to whether it's just dealing with our health or hormones or anything else that's going in our life, is to trust our intuition and to start to embrace the vulnerability of honestly admitting where we are in this one particular moment in time, and then seeking the support from the women around us. And if you are one of those women that have been sought for comfort, is to maybe think first, be the comfort, not the solution.
Yes, exactly. I think that's well put. Because most of us do know, I guess, how to resolve, not how to resolve our issues, but we know the various avenues we can take. And maybe it's just too hard to take them at the moment.
Yeah.
It takes a certain amount of energy to pursue a solution. Nobody can see me making quotes.
Well, we all know as women that sometimes there's nothing better than a good cry.
Got it. And a hug that comes
And a
after.
hug, and a hug. I love hugs. I love hugs.
I do too.
Now, Susan, as we wrap up, do you want to just give like a bit more of a plug on your book and how people can get a copy?
Oh, for sure. The book is, again, it's called Sidelined: How Women Manage and Mismanage Their Health. It's on Amazon. It's in any bookstore it's wherever books are sold. And if they don't have it, they can order it. But Amazon, of course, is always easy, bookshops.org. And again, it's Susan Salenger, which is Salenger. That little E has been my nemesis. People spell my name wrong. But anyway, there it is. And again, don't forget the resource section if you do buy the book.
I'm going to make sure that a link to buy your book is in the show notes to make sure that it's nice and easy for anyone to get.
Thanks.
And my goal here for the roller coaster of midlife is to empower women like you to thrive in this amazing chapter of our lives. So go on, embrace the adventure, and start rocking midlife like the badass that you are. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And most importantly, share it with a friend. Our greatest power is in our community. And don't forget to visit my website at therollercoasterpodcast.com and click on Start Here. And this is where you can get your free audio course, 3 steps to go from hot mess to badass and start rocking midlife.
Love
Thank
that.
you, everyone, for tuning in. And until next time, keep riding the roller coaster and embracing the adventures of midlife. Thank you to all of our listeners. And Susan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks again for having me. It was terrific. I loved it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.